Hey everyone, this is Matt. Welcome back to my channel, Blind to Billionaire. This video is a follow-up to the genetic testing appointment that I had this morning. I will talk through it in detail coming up.
Nice.
So I hope you watched my video from a couple days ago. I uploaded a video talking about how I had an upcoming appointment for a genetic test on July 3rd. So today is July 3rd, and this morning I had my appointment. If you haven't watched my video, I would highly suggest that you go back and watch it. I think the title is something along the lines of how to get a free genetic test for Retinitis Pigmentosa. It's something along those lines. I just did it on July 1st, on Sunday. So as I mentioned, today is July 3rd. My appointment was this morning for the genetic test. And the genetic test that I went in for was the My Retina Tracker Genetic Testing Study. So I know it's a long title, but it's a comprehensive panel which actually screens for roughly 180 genes to figure out and to identify which gene mutation is causing the retinitis pigmentosa. So as I mentioned in my previous video, I also did a second genetic test maybe a year and a half ago, and that was Spark Therapeutics. And that one actually only screened for 30 genes, and it came back inconclusive. So now I'm going ahead with this second genetic test, the My Retina Tracker Genetic Testing Study, to see if we can actually identify which gene is causing my RP. So I'm just going to talk through how the appointment went, and then so I'll just give you just a breakdown of how the appointment went. So this morning I went to the office. I actually went to Vitro Retina Specialists. It's there's numerous different locations here in the Minneapolis area. So I saw a doctor by the name of Polly Quorum, and so the appointment started out as just kind of like a normal eye exam. We went into the room. They did just some of the standard flash a light in my eye. Can you see the eye, or can you see the light? They cover one eye. Can you see the letter up on the screen? And then after we went through all these, they dilated my eyes, and then we went out to the waiting room. We hung around for a little while, and then we were called back. They took some pictures. I'm sure all of you who have retinitis pigmentosa have done this too. You put your chin on the little hold, and then they you look forward for maybe a minute each eye, and then they take some photos. So we did that, and then from there I went into the room, and as I was waiting for the doctor, her assistant was in the room, and I mentioned something. I said, "Now, do you have record in the system that I'm here for a genetic test?" And he actually said, "We don't do that here." And I thought, okay, well, obviously there's been some confusion, because the reason I'm here at the office today is for the genetic test. And so he went back and forth for about a half an hour. We sat in the room going back and forth with him, kind of answering questions, helping him kind of figure out what he was looking for. Anyway, he talked to quite a few people. He made a couple phone calls, and anyway, he came to the bottom of it. And so what it comes down to is, so anyway, the doctor eventually came into the room, and she asked who referred me and why I was there, and I said I was there for the genetic test. And she said, well, that's a test that typically costs thousands of dollars, and if you're willing to pay for it, we can figure out a way to administer it. And I obviously wasn't in agreement with any of that, because that conflicted with the information that I previously learned about this genetic test. And that information that I previously learned is that the My Retina Tracker Genetic Testing Study is actually temporarily a free, it's going to be free for anyone who signs up and wants it, provided you're signed up on the myretinatracker.org website. And the way that it's free is some very generous donor donated a bunch of money to a foundation or somewhere, and they've set this money aside specifically for this genetic test. So I'm not sure how much money it is and how long it's going to last, but it sounds like it's a substantial amount of money that has been set aside for any RP patients who want to go in and get this genetic test done, and then it's actually covered, provided the funds are still available when people go in to do this. So anyway, the doctor left the room. She didn't really have much to say. She was completely clueless and didn't really know what was going on. So the people who actually got down to the bottom of this was her assistant, and then another guy in the office actually knew more about it. So they brought him into the room, and he was very transparent. He knew everything that I knew, and which was he like I said, he was very transparent, and he said, this genetic test is actually very new to the office. I'm only the second patient that has come in asking for it, and the first patient was actually coming in later this afternoon for the exact genetic test. So again, it was very, very new. Today is actually the first day that they have been administering it, and he actually walked into the room with one of the kits, and he explained that he has 5 kits in his possession at the current time, but he only has 1 consent form at the moment. So I was unable to do the genetic test today because he only had 1 consent form, which maybe I'm just ignorant, but I thought, well, don't you have like a copy machine? You can just make a couple copies, but maybe it was already filled out or something. I don't know. Again, I don't really know much about that, but so he had 1 consent form, and it was already spoken for the patient that was coming in later this afternoon for the genetic test. But how it goes is this genetic test, it consists of a blood sample and a saliva sample. So he said that the saliva sample consists of roughly 2 tablespoons of saliva that you need to collect into a vial, and they do that right there in the office. And then obviously the blood is just a blood draw. And then once they have those samples, they just package them up and then send them into wherever they're going. So that's how it went. As for the genetic test, I will be going in, it sounds like next week. He's going to give me a call next week, and we're just going to set up a time for me to jump in there and do the test. It should only take about 20 minutes, he said, at the most. So yeah, that's my experience with today so far. I'm glad I got more information. As for the funding, this guy that I talked to did confirm that it is a free genetic test at the moment, while there is still that grant money set aside for people with RP who want this genetic test. So that is confirmed, and the money is still set aside. There is available funds, but like I said earlier, when these funds run out, that's it. It sounds like. But it sounds like there is quite a bit of money set aside. So anyway, if you're interested in doing this, I would highly recommend, if you have retinitis pigmentosa, I would highly recommend that you look into the Spark Therapeutics genetic test. That is free as well. Check out my other video, and I talk about it more in that one. But anyway, you just contact Spark Therapeutics and you ask them for the free genetic test, and they will know exactly what you're talking about. But as far as this genetic test, the comprehensive panel that screens roughly 180 genes for retinitis pigmentosa, if you're interested in this one, you need to be registered on myretinatracker.org. That's one of the requirements, the prerequisites in order to be qualified for this free genetic test. So you need to be registered on there. And then what I would recommend is, if you're here in the Minneapolis area, there must be some kind of database online. Maybe it's on the My Retina Tracker website, or I would Google around there. I'm not sure where they found it, but they mentioned that there's a database that has a list of doctors that actually administer this genetic test. So I would check that out. Like I said, I don't know exactly where they found it, but they were referring to it today in the office, this list. So it must be a list that just highlights some of the doctors in your city or your area that could administer the test. So again, the test is My Retina Tracker Genetic Testing Study. So yeah, that is my experience so far. And next week or the week after, whenever I go in there and actually have this test completed and administered, I will again shoot and upload another follow-up video to that and give you more information that I have. But this is the information that I have so far that I gathered today, and I hope it's helpful. And again, I would definitely check it out. If you haven't had a genetic test done, I would definitely recommend it, because ultimately in the end it's going to help all of us if we can get all of this information and really pinpoint which gene mutations are causing our RP. It's going to help researchers, scientists, doctors, pharmaceutical companies, whoever it is that's going to be finding and manufacturing or developing the cure for RP. This database and this information is definitely going to help all of them and us ultimately in the end. And just like we talked about in the office today too, is you never know. Just because if you find a cure for RP, it could translate into cures for other diseases too. You just never know. So ultimately, it's going to help all of us in the end. So I would highly recommend doing it if you haven't already. So anyway, stay tuned. I will give you more updates in the future to this. Otherwise, always subscribe, hit the like button. Otherwise, leave any comments or questions that you have down below, and I answer all the questions as quickly as I can. So thanks again for watching, and I always upload more RP related topics, quite a few times per week. So thanks again for watching. I will see you again soon.